I'll conduct the roll call.
Thank you.
Director Bennett,
Here.
Director Jenkins,
Present. Present.
Director Young,
Present.
Vice President Garcia, President Moore.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any approvals for any board members that need to do remote participation?
No.
Okay. Let's go ahead. Can we do the pledge of allegiance for us?
Hand over our heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public participation is now open.
Members of the public may participate and give public comment in one of four ways. In person at West Valley Water District Boardroom located at 855 West Baseline Road in Rialto, California, by joining the Zoom meeting with access code 840-293-7790, or by telephone by calling 888-475-4499 with that same access code, or by email to administration@wvwd.org. We haven't received any public comment tonight.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you.
I second.
Call for the vote. Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Jenkins,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
Vice President Garcia, not present, President Moore.
Yes.
Motion passes 401. Thank you.
Good evening, President Moore and honorable members of the Board of Directors. This evening, we are pleased to hold a special board workshop to provide an overview of the 2025 legislative session, discuss what lies ahead regarding legislation and Prop 4 funding, and present an opportunity for West Valley Water District to consider proposing legislation for the 2026 legislative year. Tonight, we are also pleased to be joined by the California Strategies team, Senator Jim Brulti, Claire Van Zuden, and Charles Watson. Kristen and Lily were unable to join us this evening, but they continue to serve as vital members of the team. At this time, I will turn it over to Isabel Medina, Public Outreach and Government Affairs Representative, to present a recap on behalf of the Public Outreach and Government Affairs team.
Good evening, President Moore and Honorable Board of Directors. It's an honor to stand here this evening and present to you the 2025 End of the Year Legislative Recap. On January 16, 2025, the Board of Directors adopted the legislative platform, which has been our guiding document to proactively engage in legislation. This platform outlines the district's priorities, defines desired outcomes, and establishes position on proposed legislation and policy matters impacting our region, all in alignment with our strategic plan. If you take a look at this screen, here are some key priorities that are in our legislative platform. This includes water use efficiency, workforce, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and water quality. On the screen is a summary of the 16 bills we formally took positions on this year. Our lobbyists will go into detail on some of these key pieces of legislation. Up next is an overview of our 2025 advocacy and engagement, which included visits to key stakeholders, our delegation, and tours of our facilities. First up, here are some photos of key visits from our DC advocacy visits where we had the opportunity to meet with federal policymakers. Next up is an overview of our Sacramento visits. With the assistance of California Strategies, we engage in various state advocacy visits throughout the year, which has helped us increase our district profile in Sacramento. Pictured are our board and staff meeting with our local representatives and Director Jenkins testifying on a key piece of legislation, SB 394, which enhances water theft penalties. As part of our legislative advocacy, we've engaged with various associations, including the Association of California Water Agencies, ACWA. This included attending Ledge Days in Sacramento, attending regional panels on federal and state advocacy, and hosting a tour with our Aqua Region 9 representative, Michael Cervantes, to foster better relationships with our association. And with that, I'm proud to announce once again that we have been the recipient of Aqua's Region 9 Outreach Award, which recognizes agencies that demonstrate exceptional leadership and involvement in advancing Aqua's legislative and regulatory priorities. We are so excited to receive this award at Aqua's Fall Conference in December. We've also been successful in being part of the California Special Districts Association. Pictured is board and staff attending legislative days in Sacramento, attending annual or monthly regional special district dinners, and hosting a tour with CSDA Senior Public Affairs Field Coordinator Chris Palmer to highlight district initiatives. We recently joined the California Municipal Utilities Association, where we were able to attend CMUA's legislative committee meetings, host a district tour with CMUA's legislative team, and attend CMUA Capitol Days in Sacramento. One of our key priorities in our legislative platform and strategic plan is regional collaboration. We successfully met with our partner agency, Cucamonga Valley Water District, this year to tour their district. As part of the Southern California Water Coalition, we attended their annual dinner and various legislative meetings. We also had the pleasure of attending IUA's Water Table and BIA's 2025 Southern California Water Conference. We also hosted 2 very successful tours. One was with Senator Adam Schiff's field representative, and the other was with our Assembly member, Robert Garcia. During these tours, we were able to showcase FBR and our Oliver P. Romer expansion and upgrade project. With that, here are some of the priorities we will continue monitoring in the next legislative year. We will continue to closely monitor Prop 4 funding to make sure vital infrastructure and water reliability projects get the support they need. We will continue to be committed to keeping our water system strong and reliable by investing in projects that replace aging pipes and equipment. Lastly, we will continue to support policies and programs that invest in education, training, and career development. With that, thank you so much. And any questions? Okay, I will be calling up Socorro to finish some 2026 upcoming events.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. With that, we also want to have the board aware of the upcoming legislative advocacy trips. We have noticed some just for the board's knowledge for the next year, and I know we'll be working on getting the board prepare for those upcoming trips. And with that, I would like to now welcome the California Strategies team up for the presentation. Working? Clicker wait, this clicker's there. Did it freeze?
Well, thank you, Mr. President, board members, and staff. As you know, I'm Jim Brulte, and I'm part of the team that works to help you here locally and in Sacramento. For the record, Adam Schiff and I were freshmen many years ago. I'm pretty sure we canceled out most of each other's votes, but I'm glad you had his staff here. We really appreciate the fact that we've had the opportunity to work with your team for over a year. I have to tell you, we found your team to be totally professional and I'd say demanding, but Socorro is sitting here, so I won't say that. With me today is Claire and Charles, who are part of our Sacramento team, and we're going to do 3 or 4 things. We're going to walk through a little bit of the overview of the legislative session that was just concluded, review some priority legislation, talk about Prop 4 funding, allocations and next steps, and then talk about the 2026 legislative outlook. We're happy then to answer any questions you have on those topics or any other topics you want to query us on. So with that, let me
introduce Claire and have her present.
Hi, I'm Claire Van Zuyden. I think I've met a number of you and really have enjoyed hosting you all in Sacramento and for the various advocacy days and trips that you all have taken up to Sacramento, whether it's meeting with lawmakers or key state agencies. It's been really great to help elevate your profile and presence in Sacramento and also get to know you all. Advance. Is it this clicker? Yeah, here we go. Okay, and then Senator Bulge just went over the 5 or so things that we'll cover today. But again, feel free to interrupt me if you have any specific questions on slides, or we can do some Q&A at the end. So for the 2025 legislative session, theme that we heard kind of day in and day out was affordability. And that took various forms. So whether it's affordability for Californians, there was a lot of focus on affordability around energy costs. And so with that, you know, we saw the regionalization of the, also saw rolling back of various ratepayer fund initiatives. We also saw streamlining for oil and gas permitting. And so there was a big focus this year just generally on how to make California more affordable for folks. And then in addition to that, you know, it was a tough budget year. We have a budget deficit in California. Unfortunately, looking ahead to 2026, it's a similar outlook. But when it comes to sort of climate and water programs, I would say the positive is that we do have this Prop 4 dollars that the voters passed. And a big portion of that is really focused on wildfire and water. And so that is a source of funding that's separate from the general budget that I think is going to be one that we're going to be keenly focused on in terms of supporting you all. And then the other one is Cap and Trade, or now known as Cap and Invest. These are also dollars that can go to climate programs that are not part of the general fund. So those are 2 sources of funding that, while the legislature has been really focused on affordability and budget cuts, those remain viable programs moving forward. And Cap and Invest was reauthorized at the very end of session to go through 2045. So now that will be a stable market or a stable source of revenue looking forward in terms of climate dollars. Any questions on that before I move on? And then, of course, just, you know, for those that were all part of the recent election, you know, Prop 50, of course, was a key component of the end of the legislative session in terms of getting that onto the ballot. And so that took a lot of focus from the legislature as well as from the governor in terms of getting that on the ballot this year. So with that, I'll pass it over to Charles, and he's going to run through our priority legislation that we supported you all on in terms of the key bills. I know that Isabel shared about 16 bills that we weighed in on, but we wanted to just cover about 6 here that are most relevant to the district.
Thank you, Claire. Good evening, everyone. Charles Watson, Senior Associate at California Strategies and proud part of the team. As Isabel mentioned in her presentation, 2025 was a very active year and productive year in the legislature in the water space. Leading into session, we developed, along with the team, the district's legislative platform, as Isabel mentioned, and that really helped guide our priorities throughout the year. As session began, we actively monitored bill introductions to make sure that we were tracking everything that could be of impact to the district. And from there, using the legislative platform, developed our strategies on where to weigh in on key pieces of legislation. As we adopted positions, we actively engaged with the legislature and helped weigh in key committee hearings, meeting with legislative staff and key members, and really tried to increase West Valley's prominence and awareness with key decision makers. To highlight a few examples of legislation that we weighed in on and actively engaged on, a couple bills that did make it all the way through the legislative process were SB 72 and SB 394. SB 72 directed California to develop long-term water supply targets and set pretty lofty goals in terms of water supply to help maintain long-term resiliency for the state. SB 394, as Isabel mentioned, and Director Jenkins was able to testify on, was really aimed at curbing water theft and allowing local districts and municipalities to adopt ordinances to establish, fines and penalties for water theft. We think that'll be a good measure to curtail theft moving forward. Some bills that we weighed in on that did not make it all the way through the legislative process, and we expect to come back next year, were SB 601 and AB 794. AB 794, the California Safe Drinking Water Act, would basically allow the State Water Board to streamline development of regulations relating to PFAS and other contaminants. It is something that we, along with many others, raised concerns at, especially with the streamlined process that it would allow the Water Board to undertake. That did become a 2-year bill, but is something we expect to see next year. Likewise, SB 601 by Senator Ben Allen, related to waters of the U.S. and waters of the state, was turned into a 2-year bill, but is something we expect to see next year. Another very hot topic was open meeting and teleconferencing requirements for local agencies. AB 259 was something we were closely monitoring, and then ultimately some of that got folded into SB 707, which did pass and got signed by the governor, and that amends the Brown Act and establishes some new teleconferencing requirements as well as language services for open meetings. So something that water districts all throughout the state and local municipalities are kind of learning how to deal with, but just something to be aware of moving forward. And then lastly, something to highlight is low-income water rate assistance. AB 573 and SB 350 by Senator Durazo were 2 priority bills aimed at allowing districts to provide low-income water rate assistance. Ultimately, they made it both far through the legislative process, but were turned into 2-year bills late in session. Those are that is a priority that we expect to be coming back. Aqua has established a working group that will be focusing on that in 2026. Just wanted to highlight, some of those key bills that we were very actively engaged on. But I think kind of the key takeaway is this is a first year of a 2-year session, and a lot of these key issues will be coming back in 2026. And lastly, as Claire mentioned, a key issue is Prop 4. Negotiations on the budget usually wrap up in July, but Prop 4 got extended all the way till the end of session. But ultimately, there was a deal struck on the first tranche of allocations of Prop 4, and Claire will go into a little bit more detail on that, but it'll also be a discussion next year on the second round of funding. But we can go into more detail on that. I'll turn it back to Claire.
All right, thank you. I know this is relatively hard to read, so we are definitely glad to share copies around if they haven't already in terms of hard copies. But just building on what Charles shared, so, obviously Prop 4 was passed by the voters in terms of the overall buckets or the larger amounts of funding going to each program. And then it was really up to the legislature to decide how to then break that out into smaller sections or smaller programs. The table shows the breakout of what we consider really the key water. We didn't include a lot of the wildfire and other things that are not as relevant to you all, but really the key water programs. And if you look at the various columns, the 2025-2026 allocation is what's referred to in this SB 105, the Wiener bill, which is basically what got appropriated at the end of the session. And then when you see amount remaining, that basically shows the amount that could get appropriated next year or in following years. And so for the amount that's allocated in that 2025-2026, the key programs that we're monitoring for you all and actively engaging on are specifically the Water Quality and Safe Drinking Water Program. That's that first line item. So roughly $183 million from this year got allocated to that. We're also monitoring the IRWIN program, which is the Integrated Regional Water Management Program. That did not receive dollars for this year, but that will likely receive dollars for either next year or future years. And if that is something that's a priority, it's definitely going to be something that we're going to be advocating on for next year to be allocated with the next tranche of Prop 4 funds. And then finally, the other program is the Water Reuse and Recycling. Again, that's at the State Water Board. And that got allocated roughly $153 million for this year. And so The allocations, while they happened at the very end of session, meaning in September, we're likely going to see that those funds can start being dispersed early next year to mid next year. And so we'll be working with your team in terms of coordinating on which programs are the most beneficial to you all, and then how we can access those dollars. And then in terms of the next allocation of Prop 4 funds, Governor Newsom will be releasing his initial budget in January. It typically happens within the first 2 weeks of January. And a lot of times that January budget is really kind of like an initial budget, very high level. It typically won't break down to the extent here. And that will be what the legislature works on basically between January and August when session ends. And so during that time, we'll be working to advocate specifically for those Prop 4 dollars that matter the most to you all. Does anyone have any questions on Prop 4? Okay. Yeah?
I'm trying to understand the percentage. So, so for example, the groundwater management, it's 8%, but it adds up to more than 100%. So how is that divided, or how is that percentage?
So it should be the percent allocated, should just be the percentage of the allocation compared to the bond total. If there's some math wrong here, we can definitely update it. But it basically should be, so there's the allocated funds, and then that should be the percent of the total bond amount.
Okay, so for water quality, safe drinking water, it's 32%. And then the next says flood risk storm management, it's 37%. And then the rivers, lakes, streams, and watershed is at 40%. So now we're over already 100.
Oh, I see. No, sorry. It goes, the percentage is across the row, not across the, so I don't have a pointer here. But so for the bond totals, let's just do water quality, safe drinking water. So the bond total is $610 million. That's what the voters approved for that. And then Prop 4 dollars from this last legislative session allocated 194 of that 610, or 32%. And therefore, there's 416 left over of the 610. Does that make sense?
Is that
so
for the next year?
So it could be next year, or it could be future years. It's basically the total amount remaining in Prop 4. And each year, the legislature will determine how much to allocate. So they could allocate that full remaining 416, or they could choose to allocate a portion of it next year and then a portion of it the following year.
Okay. And what was the total allocated for Prop 4 total?
The total for water is on here, but there's also wildfire. I want to say it was 2.7 billion total. 2.7 billion total.
Billion?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're in a deficit, where does that money come from? Just wondering.
It's bonded state money.
Oh, so we pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay. 2.7 billion, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Billion.
Billion.
Billion with a B. Yeah.
2.7 billion.
Correct.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Yeah, of course. Okay. So to Vice President Garcia's comment, we are in a budget deficit. So for next year, it's looking like an $18 million budget deficit as of yesterday when DOF came out with their numbers. That actually is a smaller deficit than was anticipated because those wealthy Californians did better than anticipated in terms of their tax revenues coming in. And so our deficit is smaller as of right now. But that being said, the loss of federal funds, there potentially would be further budget shortfalls. And so that's something just to keep in mind going into the next session, that there's not going to be a lot of new spending or new programs that don't have their own sources of funding. So that's where Prop 4 and the Cap and Invest become important, because they're their own separate sources of funding that are separate from the general fund dollars. The other two bills that we expect to see back in 2026, both of these are the ones that Charles mentioned, SB 601 Allen and AB 794 Gabriel. So we'll be tracking those as those get kicked off with the next legislative session starting in January. And then a few bills that may be introduced by the water community that we thought would be helpful for you all to be aware of. There's various aqua subcommittees that are getting developed on these. And so one of them is around wildfire liability protections. This is really, I would say, the start of these conversations, to where we don't necessarily foresee a bill to necessarily come together next year, or perhaps it starts to, but I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. And there's really two pieces to this. So one is to clarify and declare public water agencies' limited role in the context to fire. And then the second is to establish best management practices for aid in fire suppressions for water districts to consider when they develop their emergency response plans. So those are kind of two pieces that I think water districts are interested in looking at in terms of reducing their wildfire liability. The second is around the California Endangered Species Act reform and potential cleanup to AB 1319. So this AB 1319 passed, and it basically listed for any any candidate for listing gets the same protection as those that are listed. And I think there are some water agencies that have concerns over providing the same protections for candidates as well as those that are listed, and the potential risks or costs associated with that. And so I think that there's some folks that are interested in seeing some sort of reform to that bill. Charles also mentioned the low-income water rate assistance. This is another subcommittee that ACWA has put together, and there's likely going to be further legislation on this next year. And then the last piece is addressing state water board fees. I think there's a number of water districts that feel that fees have dramatically increased in the last 10 years without a lot of benefit. And so trying to understand why those costs are going up, what they're being used for, and then maybe how to put in certain parameters for how much it can go up each year. And so I think that's also something that folks are looking at for legislation if they're not able to work it out at the state water board level itself. And then I think that you all are going to be hearing potential sponsored legislation on the potential to increase the number of water board meetings for compensation that you all will hear later tonight. And so if that does move forward, that would be something that we would be supporting you all on for next year. And then just for context setting, it is the governor's last year. With that, there's several key legislators that it's also their last year. We have a new pro tem that just started earlier this week, Senator Monique Limon from the Santa Barbara area. And so there likely will be committee changes with her new leadership that will start in January. And so she took over for Senator McGuire, who also is termed out. So we will probably see those changes in the near future, and we'll definitely keep you all and your staff up to speed for the key committees that you all care most about in terms of those leadership changes. And with that, I think, are there any other questions? I just really want to say thank you. And then on behalf of those that weren't able to come down today, we really, really enjoy being a part of your guys' team and helping to execute your goals and objectives, and look forward to another productive year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Under current California Water Code section, so right now, I'm bringing up the legislative proposal to increase the limited compensations meetings from 10 to 20. So I'm gonna give a little bit of background on this. Under current California Water Code, board members' compensation is capped at 10 meetings per month. Today, board members are routinely engaged in a wide range of responsibilities, including standing committees, ad hoc or advisory committees, participation in JPAs, interagency coordination with cities, counties, and other districts, industry conferences, workshops, and mandatory trainings. As a result, board members often participate in more than 10 compensating meetings currently allowed. Because meeting compensation is modest, the current cap can limit who is able to serve. UC Davis research shows women hold 27% of water board seats, Latinos 15%, and other people of color about 5%. Increasing the meeting limit could help broaden participation and improve board diversity. The West Valley Water District is considering a legislative amendment to the section 20202 that would raise the cap on compensating meetings from 10 to 20 per month. If the board provides direction, West Valley Water District will work with California Strategies to identify a legislative author and move this proposal forward for the 2026 legislative session, and engage with statewide organizations such as ACWA, CSCA, CMUA, and others. And that is the end of my update on my presentation on this.
Thank you. So, are there any questions or comments?
So just to have clear direction to your staff and your lobbyist, you could entertain a motion to explore a proposed amendment to Section 2202 of the Water Code to seek the support and submission by a statewide organization, and direct the West Valley staff work with Cal Strategies in search of an author to advance the initiative.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Can you read all that?
No.
I know.
I'll second that motion.
Second? Okay, yeah, second.
I'll call
Call
for the
for vote.
vote. Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Jenkins?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
Vice President Garcia?
Yes.
President Moore?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
There's nothing else. We adjourn this meeting.
All right.